Okay, so we've got a little bit of movement on here. So what we've actually done now is installed this cockpit, and you might see I've got a bit of a hole in the floor. So this is one of those ones where, you know, it was a mistake. I've cut it too fine, and I've gone straight through the hole in the bottom. So there's an easy fix to that. What we can actually do is just use a little bit of thin plastic card, or you could literally paint the bottom of the actual cockpit well itself. So we've got here some of paintbrush grey that we just use, this XF 19, bit thick and gloopy this. So what we'll do is just paint this over here so it will show through the floor and hide it, and then we can weather it and take care of it. It's one of those things at the time you, oh my god, I've just ruined it. But really guys, I wouldn't worry about it too much. These things happen all the time, so it's a little easy fix. Now, we've spoken about obviously the difficulties of fitting resin with lots of the other builds. This one's no different. We've had to cut the entire bottom off from an inch of its life to fit it through. Other little modifications we've done here at the front, there's no screw bolt going off. We've taken care of it, and you might be able to see a little bit of a gap down there. This is so the fibre optics that we've got for this top part has all got something to flow through and come out into this area, and then here at the front then obviously we can fit the nose, but that's where the lighting system be, the electrics and everything as it goes back down. Now to fit all this in, as you said, it's been a bit of a fix to get it all in. So actually what we've done here is sand off the top of this wheel well as well to flatten it down and, as I say, mix it all in. We've got some holes to open up now. This is obviously kit specific. Check your references to see if you've got these. There's little radar warning receivers on that fit just outside of the wheel wells and just here behind the intakes as well. But obviously, as I said, check your actual aircraft you're doing to make sure it is there. So what we do, we have a quick dry fit. So we just fit this up into the back. We can get it all in. Now there's lots of little tabs that run all around this to make sure it all fits in well. So what I'll do, I'll just show you a quick little fit to get this one in. Now the easiest way is to flip it over, because you can line up then these intake areas, but what you've got to do is make sure that all the little areas are flipped over. We've got little, these little guys down here, and that's it, it will click and then goes in. Now as you can see, it's quite a tight little gap running along here, but this is one of those ones where we can just push him up and make a little bit of difference. But once you fit it all in properly, it's a pretty good joint along here. We're not really worried about those. They're all in there nice and tight. So we've got the same to make sure we get these ones for the gear on and everything else, and it should all fit in quite nicely and all goes together pretty well with no real problems. As I say, once it's all in, and as I say, that cockpit, once we're in there, you're not going to see it with the seat and all the other bits anyway. So that's that. Now the other decisions we've got to make before we button this up is, one, we've got to get the power supply out, so we've got to fit the LED and everything else in there. Okay, so cockpit is all done. Obviously I haven't done the heads-up display glass work and everything, but what's going to happen is we can just feed these in just down the back like this, okay, and make sure they're all through, and then what it'll do is literally, it says hopefully, it'll get it in there and it'll just sit in here and plumbs in just like that. So we've got fibre optics hanging out the front, all ready for the LED, and that is all now all plumbed in there, taking care of it like that. So that's our cockpit. Now obviously we've got lots of photo etch work to go around it and everything else to take care of it, but for the moment it's all in place. Now it's picking up the weight now, it's getting quite heavy, this kit. Thank goodness it's got sort of white metal undercarriage to take some of this weight. But that is really the last of the big chopping around and everything else like that to be done. So now we can sort of really just press forward and get it together. Now we've got to build up the wheel wells, but that's nothing really, you know, particularly hard work and everything else. Just got the panels to go on, so I'll do them without you, and a few other little bits and pieces that go on the bottom, so we can take care of that, get in. The one thing we do have to do is how you're going to do the tail. Now this tail we spoke about briefly before, because it's got a whole piece to the tail, which is this guy here, which normally bolts up in. Now, you know, it's a moving part, so it does move and all the rest of it. You could quite easily mask this off and then do it and everything else. The trouble is, though, because the clamshell, as I call it, or the heat deflector area around the back here, you want it to be a nice join and everything else. It might be just a little bit that you might want to perhaps put this on afterwards or before it, or exactly how you want to do it. So really, it's a little bit of a personal choice of how it goes in. As I say, when we take this off, if we just remove these a second, you can see our small dilemma. Okay, so this would normally fit in here. Okay, and then it comes back in, the top all fits in like so, and then hopefully, or it should, when this all pushes in and goes back together, it all fits in just like this, and you've got a moving large part at the back here. But obviously this is the point I'm on about under here, how we actually wanted to do all this heat work. You know, you could move it, but in some ways it'd be so much easier if this was a separate fit afterwards. So really, that is your choice. Do you want to do it as a separate one, or in some ways the other way you could do it is cut the tail in two, literally slice this in two and have it as a drawer fit together afterwards. So that's a personal thing that actually you might want to do. You might want to cut this in part, and that way it will just literally lock together once it is all in there. But as I say, real personal choice if you want to do it. Okay, so we've got obviously the cockpit installed, and this top one is in, so just a little bit of super glue on the top puts that in just like that. So what we've done now, fed the lines down, and you might remember we had the cables on, but I cut the cables off so I can do them to the right length and in one join right the way through off the front here. So if we move you in, you can see what we've got. So the fibre optic just bunched together, a little bit of super glue. This is the LED, is inside the little brass sleeve. Okay, so the fibre optics pushed in, super glued into place, and have here. Okay, so now what we've got to do is just attach our longer wires onto the actual main wiring. Now this is quite thin little wiring stuff here, this stuff here, right? So this is just literally going to fit onto here. So I'm hoping we've already got some solder on here already. So we're hoping this will melt through and will then give us a base to solder our other bits to. There we go, just like that. So we're going to do the same with the other one, okay, just as we've done there. Fold them back, and they're going to run underneath here. You might be able to see just up in here, up down the side of this one, down here, and then they're going to come out near the bottom, which I'll show you in a moment. So I'll just finish soldering these on nice and tight. Okay, so as you can see, we've got it all bunched up together. Now, a nice little trick is these. Now, these are insulating sleeves, which are actually heat shrink. So pop over them with a hairdryer, and they all shrink up. And what it does, obviously, it insulates everything, but also it keeps everything nice and tidy. So obviously, we've got the reducer down in here on the end. So we're going to slip one of these right over, hoping it's going to fit, which it's probably not. Let's just try and grab the next size up, which will probably be something like this one. Let's grab one of these blue ones. I'm hoping this one. No, not even that one's going to go. So it's going to have to be a very big one. We're going to pop this blue sleeve right over everything on the back end here, just like that. Okay, and then you pop along with your hairdryer. Slow hot heat, and you should find. Obviously, don't keep it too close to your model, because you obviously don't want the ending. But you should find it all starts to shrink down like it is now. And it keeps everything very neat and tidy. And it keeps all the wires going in the right direction, what we want. But they're really handy to have, just save going around it with tape and all the rest of it. Just like that. So just get the hairdryer out the way. Okay, so we'll do a quick test to make sure it's all still working before we get to the point of thinking, right, we can box all this one up. So we just get the things. So obviously with LEDs they only go one way on, so if it doesn't work, just do it the other way. There we go, and you can probably still see we've got light going through. I can see the LED on the top, the light on the top, the light's on the inside. So that is all okay now. It's still a little bit warm for a bit, but you can get used to it. So there we go, that's that one on and looking the business. Now obviously we're still all just banded together, loose fitting, but what we need to do is bring it out just down on the bottom here, because in reality this is where the external power link is, where they actually plug in. That's where I want it to come out of, so it looks like it's powered, plugged in, because it's in maintenance and things like that. So that's with those things. Now, fitted the tail on, you can see at the same time. We've also got the bits all around here. We've put the tailplanes together, obviously glued and sanded, let them dry overnight so we can get them together. Obviously we've opened up these two top holes for the little bump which is going to go on top of the wing. So they're ready to go soon. We've also got the actual flaps, same thing again. I thinned them down just a little bit on the back because I found those a little bit too thick. So we've taken care of those. Nose cone, obviously it's quite important for this part, which is coming up now, because we want to make sure it all fits in, which we know it does because I've tested it all already. Okay, but that's in a moment just going to come in here and fit on the end just like that. So that one's all ready to go as well. So we're all really to the point now where we can start to almost bring it all together. So what I'm going to do now is tidy up these cables. I'm going to glue this underside piece in, which is obviously going to take a bit of time going around absolutely everywhere. And we're going to glue this tail section in. And I'm going to do it as a moving part, and I'm going to mask it off to do the top half, because I think doing it separate is going to be a real pain to get it all done. As soon as we've got those in, we can start playing around with the engine areas, we can get the wing tops on, and we can really get this one together. So we spent a little bit of time on this one, to be honest, really making sure we get the joins and everything all lined up. So as you can probably see here, what we've actually done is go along with a little bit of Mr. Surfer down these seams, because they're not exactly perfect. Same ones with these ones coming up the top and around. And then under here on the underside, smoothing out areas like down here below and around. Now obviously they need to totally dry off before we can get all in there. So also what we've done is pretty much quite a bit of glue all along these areas to put this tail section all in just like that. Now we need to button up and glue up still to do the rear one, but that's going to be quite a straightforward job, I should think, all going around there. But also what we can do is to get the nose section all covered up. Now it's not a perfect join the way this one goes on, there's a slight gap, and that's something I'll show you a little bit in the middle. But here we go, this is last check, make sure all your electrics are working, otherwise we're going to have to cut the nose off to find the fault actual area with it. So we just run these leads out underneath. Okay, pop your battery along. That's the same thing as always. Just a quick dip in. Yep, that's all working fine. So we're happy with that. So what we can do now is close up this nose. So what I'm going to use is a bit of extra thin and a little bit of super glue. So what we're going to do is just going to touch a little bit of super glue just around this front edge around here. The reason for using super glue is really a speed thing, because it's very easy to sand this area. There's no horrible bits going to be around here that are going to interfere with it. So that one's on, and then all we're going to do is literally come in here and line up the top and the bottom, get everything as lined up as you possibly can. And we're going to hold that just for a second. Now the super glue acts as a little bit of filler, which is obviously what we need, and then we can go around, polish it all up, make sure it's all happy and all in there nice and tight, and really we've got the phantom shape really come together very, very nicely. So we just hold this a second as this dries off. Okay, and there we go, there's our phantom shape. This is the gap that we're looking at, this one underneath here. Just down in here you can probably see a bit of a gap. So what we can do is either a plasticard trick, or we can use a little bit of super glue and kicker, polishing them up, get that one done, get these air scoops fitted on the front and everything else, so that'll take care of that. In the meantime also what we can do is fit in these little wing pylon areas here, and these are the wing pylons which go on the outside, so that's just going to come along and fit straight in like that, but those have got to be all glued and secure into place like that. Once they're on, then obviously if you are going to fit the wings in the downward position, you can come along and pop those on, but like we're going to be doing obviously, because we're going to be doing these in the upward position, so we'll leave these as a loose fit, and they're going to go on just like so a little bit later on. So that's really how it's all panning out. I'm going to just play with this nose, go around and check all these seams, give them a sand down, make sure I'm all really happy with the way they actually all are, and they're not causing us any trouble at all and anything else like that. And we're all happy with that. We can clear a bit of this away, go around, and then we can start thinking about getting the engines installed into it, getting this canopy work all sorted out, and as soon as we've got those two things done, we can think about getting some primer on. Okay, so you guessed it, absolute chaos here again. A couple of things we've done now. Okay, we've obviously installed the nose. We put that on, and as I said before, we had a bit of a gap down the bottom here. Super glue and kicker, sanded in. Nice, straightforward job to do that. We've gone around and we've blended in and just sanded in, obviously, these intakes going around. Usual thing, working through the grit. Started off with the grit on the sort of medium side, onto the fine side, and then polished them up with this one. With the green one afterwards, all nicely smoothed in. Now we've put the lumps and bumps onto the top of here, and you've got the bumps down the bottom here for the actual radar warning receivers, excuse me, things like that, they're on there now. Tail is obviously down and in place. Tiny little bit of filler needed down the front here. For some reason there's a gap. Don't know why, one of those weird ones really, but that's in as well. Now the tail is moving, so what we can do is we can mask up underneath that to protect it and to go through it. So I'm not that worried about it like I was before. It should be quite easy to paint around it. Major area though, let me just move these over here a little bit. We've got down here is the seam running underneath this tail. Now, a couple of things you can do. Usual thing is plastic card. To put in a little shim at the back here would do fine. Quicker, easier way. All I did, this is Mr. Surfacer 1000, okay? I brush this on and just leave it. Don't play with it and let it set. And it's made a perfect filling line all in there, just like that. Trouble is, you get these little swirls and bits and pieces all around it, everything else like that. So the quickest way of getting rid of them is to take some cellulose thinners, okay, and a cotton bud. So we've got a cotton bud. All you do, drop it in the cellulose thinners, don't flood it, wring it out on the side a little bit, okay, and then all we do is just going to come along and we just give it a rub all on the top, okay, and then just drag it off. When it starts to get a bit draggy, you can feel it pulling, just pop in with a bit more, clean end, okay, and just go backwards and wipe off all the excess, okay. Don't overdo it, otherwise you're going to end up rubbing through. Once that's done just like that, we'll give it a blow, just to dry it off a little bit. Flip it up the other way, grab a bit more, okay, and we can do the same then on the top part. Get rid of it, all the excess on the top. And when you've got it all off, so you're literally just down in that groove, stop, dry it down, and that should leave you something like this area just here. So we've got this area here now all done, and that's there. So what you can do, come along with the polishing stick and just go and buff it all up just to make it all nice again. Make sure you do it when it's totally dry, and this just buffs it up, tidies up that entire area. But there we go, we have no seam underneath that at all very nicely done. So that takes care of what can be quite a tricky seam quite quickly. Big thing is you just need to let it dry a little bit. Other things we've been getting on with is obviously we've masked up the actual front canopy. Usual way you probably see me do this one, I'll show you again later on with the rear ones. Tamiya tape that way on. Painted black around this front nose area. Bit of a clean up. Now I'm not going to glue this in quite yet, but you've got a groove at the front and that fits in just like that. The other thing I've done, we've installed this rear part into this is the centre console fairing that goes above it, okay? So we've got a bit of coloured photo etch, it's going to go on the back here, but what we did, we masked up the outside and the inside, so hopefully now it should be dry enough for us to touch. We can come along and mask up the inside, or unmask the inside. Just like that, and then what will happen is we take this off its stick. You should just come along in a moment and we'll click in and fit in there like that. But because we sprayed the inside, it's taking care of any problems we might have with showing around here and obviously on the back and everything else. So that's those bits done. So if you wanted to now, you could glue those into place. Usual thing, PVA glue. We're going to come along and do it now. Make sure you've got this inside bit is all totally cleaned up and everything else like that. And then we're going to come in with the gator glue. You could use any real type of PVA glue, but I like the gator glue because it dries totally clear. Okay, grab a bit just like this, okay, then all we do, it's like a pulling down and rolling motion in one, so you make a film of it as you go right the way around. All round the back. as I say, it dries totally clear, so you don't have to worry too much about it if you go off. Now we've got a couple of bits of photo etch to go on. Already we've got the heads-up display is on and in. This is one of those ones where I'm doing now slightly back to front, so down in the front part first, in the back, and then hopefully clicks in. That is all in. Making sure it's lined up at the front. We're just going to leave that a moment just to go off. Now, somebody the other day asked me about what you do about getting that seamless area around it. Don't forget, in reality is these things do come off on the real aircraft and there is a seam line. If you don't want a seam line, a quick way to do it, if you take if you take a bit of PVA glue on a brush, normally you'd use a thinner brush than this, okay, and then just come along like now and plaster quite a bit on, because what you want it to do is make sure it's all going on the inside. Just go all around it like that. Cotton bud or your Q-tip, wet it so it's quite moist. Okay, and what we're going to do is just hold the end, okay, and we're just going to scoop him around just like this. Wetting it, this is just for the outer bit, so it's all off, and what you'll find is it will get rid of it all. It'll fill up the gap underneath, and then what you can do is obviously you can layer this up. So after you've put it on there, if you see there's a gap underneath there, do it again. Once you've got a good layer in there, and remember when it has a good layer in there, you pop around a little bit of Mr. Surfacer around there, and then the same thing as we did on the tail to wipe it off. But bearing in mind this is you're with a clear part, and these are obviously nasties you're using. When we say nasties, obviously chemicals. It could fog up the plastic and things like that. Personally, I wouldn't take the risk, but I know a lot of you will. So you can go around like that, and then obviously we've got this rear one as well to go in, but we won't glue that just yet. It's got some nice locating tabs to hold this rear one in place, and obviously we might need to put some more wiring in and bits and pieces we want to do. But certainly we need that front one on. So then what we can do is we can actually attach on the back, cover them up and seal them in position, and then we can get on with primers and painting and everything else in there. But that's really the stage where we're at now, where we're almost to the point of getting this thing in the paint bay and moving it on. So now we're done like that. There's just a couple of things we can need to do underneath. We can go around and tidy up obviously the underside bits here, and go around and making sure that the fronts, the actual panel lines go all the way around, so re-putting them in. Little tip for that, if you use a knife, line it up with the panel line as you would like in here. Okay, spot where the front one is and roll it round just like that. Okay, then you can either leave it, or a razor saw, very fine razor saw. You can literally, I'm doing this slightly back to front, so I'm slightly wary of it, but you can come along and channel it down just the same way to put in a new panel line. But as I say, I'll do that when I get older. But that's the other way of going around, and you put the panel lines back in the leading edges, which are quite important to do to get those on. There's a few things we need to check on to make sure it's all okay, but obviously what we want to do is get some primer onto this, and then we can check all these seams, joins, everything else like that. We can work on the burner cans about sorting them up, painting them in Alclad and everything else. So all we've done, we've gone around, and if you've got the PE set, the photo etch set like we got here, we've done some of the little ones. This is the rear housing for the drag chute that's going to go on the very tail of this one. It's one of these little guys here, so that's quite a nice little touch as well. So we've done the photo etch for that. So we're going to do all the little bits and pieces all around it. Once they're all sorted, as I say, get some primer on this, and we can really start moving on.